Our journey began in the heart of Europe, where borders have shifted, empires have risen and fallen, and cultures meet at every river bend. Over the days ahead, we would follow a route through Bohemia and beyond, from Berlin to Budapest, tracing stories written in stone and memory, in music and art, in the voices of people we met along the way. Berlin is a city that wears its history on every corner. Our first stop was the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church, its ruined spire left standing as a reminder of the destruction of war, next to the glass and steel of the modern rebuild. Berlin is also a city of museums, and we couldn't miss the chance to see the Neues Museum. The bust of Nefertiti was breathtaking. Her painted eyes seemed to look straight through time. Nearby, the Pergamon panorama pulled us into the ancient world in an immersive experience, as if we had stepped into history itself. Later, we visited the Reichstag, and we climbed inside the huge glass dome on top. From above, the whole city stretched out. The parliament below, open to the sky. Transparency in stone and glass, meant to reflect a new Germany. Nearby is the Brandenburg Gate, once a backdrop for parades of power, now a gathering place for people and music and light. It's strange to think of it as a border marker between East and West Berlin, when today it feels more like a welcome sign. The Holocaust Memorial was different. It asked nothing of the camera, nothing of us but silence. Walking between the slabs, the noise of the city faded away. It was unsettling, disorienting, maybe exactly as it should be. Checkpoint Charlie was smaller than we imagined, but the symbolism is huge. Here, where tanks once faced each other, we watched tourists posing for photos. From there, the Berlin Wall. At the East Side Gallery, color and expression cover what was once a stark symbol of division. Each mural felt like a shout of freedom, painted over concrete that once tore families apart. Leaving Berlin, we made a day's journey to Potsdam, a city of palaces, gardens, and quiet corners of history. Our first stop was the Glienicke Bridge, the Bridge of Spies. Standing on the span where East once met West, it was easy to imagine the tension of those Cold War exchanges. From there, we wandered into the Dutch Quarter, rows of red brick houses that looked almost out of place in Germany. It felt like we had stepped into another country entirely. At Sanssouci Palace, the spirit of Frederick the Great still lingers. Terraced vineyards led us up to the summer palace, yellow walls glowing against the gardens. It was hard not to be swept up in the elegance of it all, a place built for music, ideas, and a life without worries. On our way to Dresden, we paused in Wittenberg, a town whose name echoes through history. At All Saints Church, we stood before the famous door where Martin Luther's 95 Theses once challenged the world. Nearby, a quiet memorial honors the victims of the Holocaust. History here is layered, moments of reform and hope, shadowed by tragedy. Continuing toward Dresden, we stopped in Meissen for lunch. From our vantage point, the tower of the Frauenkirche rose above the rooftops. High on the hill, Albrechtsberg Castle looked out over the Elbe. It was just a brief stop, but with the castle above us and the church tower nearby, the town left an impression of quiet elegance. Arriving in Dresden, we found a city reborn from ashes. At the heart of it all stood the Frauenkirche. Once left in ruins, it has been rebuilt stone by stone. Just nearby, the procession of princes stretched across the old town walls. Thousands of tiles depict Saxony's rulers on horseback. We wandered through Dresden Castle, its courtyards and galleries reminding us that this was once a seat of power and art. Dresden also surprised us with smaller treasures, like Fun's Dairy, known as the most beautiful dairy shop in the world. Outside the center, Albrechtsberg Palace stood high above the Elbe, a neoclassical gem surrounded by gardens and vineyards. Not far away, we admired a grand neo-Renaissance home. Its details tells us how much Dresden's wealth once shaped the cityscape. On the road from Dresden toward Prague, we paused first in Zubernice, a village-turned-open-air museum. Wooden farmhouses, a rustic church, and barns stood as if time had stopped. Walking through the courtyards and gardens, we glimpsed the rhythms of rural life that had shaped this corner of Bohemia for centuries. Later, the mood shifted completely at Dresden. The fortress town became a concentration camp during the Second World War, and walking through its gates was sobering. The barracks, the courtyards, the memorials. Everything spoke of lives interrupted, of suffering that cannot be forgotten. Arriving in Prague felt like stepping into a storybook. We began at the Powder Tower, once part of the city's fortifications, its dark Gothic spire marking the gateway to the Old Town. Streetcars rattled past as we made our way through the city. In the Wallstein Gardens, we wandered among flowers and fountains. St. Nicholas Church appeared before us in graceful Baroque curves, its interior glowing with golden frescoes. From there, we crossed the river, gazing back at Prague Castle, sitting above the Vltava, a scene that seemed almost too perfect to be real. In the Old Town Square, the astronomical clock drew a crowd, its figures marching out as they have for centuries. The next day, we began atop the Castle Hill and the Strahov Monastery with views over the city. We walked down toward the castle by the house at the Black Ox, one of the many facades that tell stories in stone and sgraffito. Entering near Matthias Gate, palaces and courtyards unfolded one after another. At Schwarzenberg Palace, Renaissance detail and power mingled in every arch and window. Then came St. Vitus Cathedral, soaring above it all, its spires piercing the sky. We walked down to Lessertown, passing by the old palace with its terraced views. Yet Prague isn't only monuments. A street musician played for us in a quiet square, his notes echoing between centuries-old walls. In another corner, we came across a playful sculpture by Karel Naprash, a touch of humor amid the weight of history. We visited the Vertba Garden, which has frescoes reminding us of Prague's devotion to beauty, painted ceilings framing carefully kept terraces. It's another spot for newlywed photo shoots. Afterward, at the John Lennon Wall, color and graffiti covered layer upon layer of stone, a living canvas of hope, peace, and music. In the late afternoon, Prague showed us another side, playful, irreverent, a little surreal. On our art walk, we encountered the Spitfire butterflies by David Cherney, their wings slowly flapping. Not far away, Kafka's head turned slowly, layer by layer, an animated sculpture of mirrors and movement. Watching it shift and realign felt like a tribute to Kafka himself, complex, fragmented, and always reflecting something back at us. Then came the most unforgettable sight, King Wenceslas astride an upside-down dead horse suspended in a passageway. Cherney's humor is sharp, sometimes unsettling. By evening, as we walked back along the cobbled streets, we carried with us the sense of Prague's endless layers, Gothic and Baroque, sacred and playful, past and present, all alive in the heart of the city. Leaving Prague behind, we headed south, carrying with us the echoes of the city's history and art. Our first stop was the Vojna Memorial Park, once a forced labor camp during the communist era. Walking through its gates, we were reminded that Prague's stories are not the only ones Bohemia holds. The memory of oppression here is still raw, still close, and still essential to remember. Later, the mood lightened as we reached the town of Cesky. Quiet streets gave us a taste of small-town life, far from the grandeur of Prague. Not far away, we paused again in Holešovice, a village that feels untouched by time. Its wide green square is framed by rows of pastel farmhouses in the South Bohemian folk style. Simple, elegant, and perfectly preserved. For a moment, it felt like we had stepped into the 18th century. From there, the road carried us deeper into South Bohemia, toward the medieval charm of Cesky Krumlov, a town waiting like a story frozen in time. In Cesky Krumlov, we found a town that feels almost untouched by time. Winding streets, painted facades, and the Vltava looping gracefully through it all. Our stay began at Hotel Ebersbach, a historic inn that set the tone with its charm and sense of place. At the entrance of St. Vitus, a stone cantharus basin stood for ritual ablutions, linking the everyday with the sacred. The interior, with its soaring arches and filtered light, seemed to carry whispers of faith across the centuries. From every corner of town, the castle looked down on us. We climbed up for views across red rooftops and into the green countryside beyond. A panorama that made the whole valley feel like a painting. The little castle caught our eye too, its sundial marking time in the courtyard. On the streets below, music drifted through the air. A violinist played for passers-by, her notes rising above windowsills lined with flowers. We stepped inside a former monastery, where the Baroque interior dazzled with gold and painted ceilings. In a local art museum, sculptures by Michal Gabriel brought a strikingly modern voice into the medieval setting. Beyond town, we visited the Cistercian Abbey in Vyšehrad, its quiet library preserving centuries of monastic life. Later, deep underground, we explored a graphite mine, tunnels carved in darkness, old equipment still in place. Cesky Krumlov gave us both beauty and depth, a place where history is not just preserved, but alive in stone, music, and memory. Leaving Cesky Krumlov, we made our way east. Our first stop was the Budweiser Budvar Brewery in České Budějovice. Inside, gleaming vats and copper kettles told the story of Czech brewing traditions. The air was rich with the scent of hops and malt, and of course, we couldn't resist sampling the famous beer at its source. Later, we reached the town of Třebíč, a place shaped by water as much as by stone. Its Renaissance square opened wide and colorful, framed by arcaded houses. Beyond the town, fish ponds stretched across the countryside. Reminders that Třebíč has been a center of pond farming for centuries. Slavonice welcomed us with quiet charm and Renaissance beauty. In the center stood the Renaissance house with its Luther prayer room. Around it, rows of sgraffito-covered buildings lined the square, their facades etched with intricate patterns that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. Outside the town, we visited Olga Gevorova-Koryova's horse farm, where rolling fields framed the stables and pastures. The rhythm of hooves in the open sky made for a gentle contrast to the stone walls of the town. Deeper in the woods, half hidden, lay a Jewish cemetery. Weathered stones leaned among the trees, moss and roots winding around them. The countryside here still carries traces of war. We walked among World War II bunkers, their concrete shells now surrounded by fields of sunflowers. Back in town, the day ended in music. A pair of musicians played guitar and mandolin, their voices carrying Czech songs into the warm evening air. From Slava Nice, we turned southeast, pausing in Třebíč, a town whose past still speaks through its stones. We walked the narrow lanes of the old Jewish quarter, a UNESCO site where houses and synagogues tell stories of a once thriving community. Further along our route, we reached Lednes Castle, a vision straight from a fairy tale. Inside, carved wood and gilded detail spoke of noble life, while outside, the landscape felt designed for endless walks and gentle afternoons. Bratislava, Slovakia, greeted us with trams clattering down Obchodna Street, carrying us into the rhythm of the city. At Michael's Gate, the last of the medieval towers, we stepped through history into the old town, where pastel buildings and narrow lanes drew us deeper in. The old town hall anchored the square, its clock tower watching over centuries of stories. Just nearby, we paused at the Pressburg Bagel Cafe, a modern stop with a name that recalled the city's older identity. The pharmacy's Salvatore facade reminded us of another era, its Baroque detail still standing proud. There's fun too. Children could splash in the Fiesdoslav fountain, the Slovak National Theater rose elegantly nearby, and on the street corner, Chumel, the bronze worker peeking up from a manhole, brought smiles to passers-by. Up on the hill, Bratislava Castle watched over the city and the Danube. From there, we saw the UFO bridge arching across the river, its futuristic tower glowing above the skyline. In the castle gardens, we met the quiet figure of a gardener at work. Around town, sculptures surprised us. Saint Cyril, Methodius, and Garaz standing solemnly. The Bratislava witch, a nod to darker folklore, and a tender scene of a father whispering in an infant's ear, capturing a moment of pure intimacy. Even the first postbox, a modest relic, seemed to carry a story of connection. On our way toward Hungary, the landscape unfolded gently. Vineyards tucked into the hills, their rural wine cellars hinting at generations of tradition. In the distance, Austrian windmills turned slowly in the breeze, timeless sentinels of the countryside. We paused at Carnuntum, Austria, once a thriving Roman city. Walking through its excavated streets and reconstructed houses, we imagined the lives lived here nearly 2,000 years ago. Soldiers, merchants, and families shaping the frontier of an empire. Later in Geyer, we stretched our legs in a city alive with Baroque architecture and colorful squares. Churches, palaces, and cobbled streets revealed a rich past layered with Hungarian charm. Our time in Budapest began at St. Stephen's Basilica, its dome rising proudly over the city. Later, we visited Heroes Square, where statues of Hungary's 7 chieftains stood as guardians of the nation's origin story. Nearby, the turrets and towers of Vajdahunyad Castle transported us into a fairy tale vision of history, while across the square, the Museum of Fine Arts reminded us of the country's artistic legacy. Inside the Hungarian State Opera House, we looked up in awe at the lavish interior. On Dohány Street, the great synagogue facade stood as a powerful reminder of Budapest's Jewish heritage. On Castle Hill, Matthias Church dazzled us with its colorful tiled roof, and the Holy Trinity column stood solemnly nearby, a Baroque plea for protection against plague. In Liberty Square, We paused at the memorial for victims of the German occupation, and only steps away, the Soviet War Memorial offered another layer of the city's tangled past. Over by the river, the Hungarian Parliament building gleamed like a crown on the water's edge, its Gothic spires piercing the sky. Yet it was the shoes on the Danube bank that brought us to silence, left as a memorial to the Jews who perished here during the war. We softened the weight of history at the city market, where vendors offered paprika, meats, and pastries under soaring iron rafters. And as evening fell, we returned to the Danube. The river shimmered with reflections of Parliament, bridges, and the life of the city at night. Budapest illuminated, a fitting finale to our journey. Our journey carried us through the heart of Central Europe. We walked in places where history still speaks, where art and music flourish, and where daily life unfolds in quiet courtyards and busy squares.